Hello, and welcome back to our podcast, A Couple of Silmarils, where we are going through the book, The Silmarillion, for the very first time. And last week, we went through um, two books that come before the Silmarillion, and they talk about the beginning of, or the creation of Arda, and also kind of got into the Valar.
Which is the Earth, just to remind
Arda,
you.
yeah, Arda is the Earth, and we also got into the Valar, all their names and different things that they are known for. So before we even get into the episode, I was going to see, Ethan, how many of the Valar can you name right now without looking at your notes?
Oh, okay. So I know there are 14 of them.
There are 14.
So we have, let's see, Manwë, Olmu, Aule, Tulkas, Mandos, Lorien, and Uromi, I think, are the lords. Then for the queens, we have Venya, Yavanna, Varda. Oh, there's a lot of these.
Yep, we need 4 more.
Nienna. Um, that might be where I stop.
Did you say Nessa?
I haven't said Nessa. No.
Este?
Este. No, that's a good one.
Ooh, that leaves us with one that neither of us are remembering. So look at your notes, see if you can figure out who we forgot. But I just wanted to see how we did there because there's a lot to know about them.
I think Vyra is who we missed.
Oh, Vyra, we've missed Vyra.
One of the V's. I
Sorry, Vyra.
There's several ones that are so close together there that hopefully as we get to know them more in the storyline, they distinguish themselves a bit more.
So if you're not familiar with the Silmarillion, there's obviously the preface and the foreword, and then there's 2 books before the Silmarillion starts. And so, like I said, we just went through those 2 books, and now we're actually starting the Silmarillion.
Can you pronounce those books?
Yes, I really struggled in the last episode to pronounce them. It's the A one that's really hard. I knew Lindela. No, I can't do it.
I think it's pretty cool. I knew Lindela is what I have down.
I knew Lindela. I kept saying it, but it's that one's a really hard one for me. And then the second one was the Valaquenta, which went through the Valar. That was a little bit easier. So this week, like I said, we're finally into the book. We decided the chapters we were kind of surprised, are actually kind of short in the Silmarillion. We thought we were going to be like breaking down maybe like half a chapter at a time, but actually we got through 2 chapters this week. The chapters we got through, the first one is chapter 1 of the beginning of days, where we learned more about the beginning of the world, or of Arda. And then the second one was of Aule and Yavanna, where we learn a little bit more about these 2 Valar, and we find out how one of the main races of Middle Earth was created. So that's coming up, but that was pretty exciting. So we are going to just go through those chapters and kind of talk about what we learned, and Ethan's going to give input as well. So the first chapter is the beginning of days. Before we go on, did you have any input?
No input as of yet.
No. I'm sure you will. So the beginning of days begins by talking about Melkor and the war he had with the Valar even before they had created anything on the earth. And he was fighting with them, and for a while he had that upper hand in this war, but then Ilúvatar gave strength to the Valar, especially he gave strength to Tulkas the Strong, who came along with his wrath, and Melkor fled after that. So as we getting into this first chapter, Melkor is not even on Arda, right? He is out somewhere. And so the Valar were brought to the world, and Yavanna starts planting her seeds. So Yavanna was I think she was like talked about as the giver of all things that grow. So she is planting her seeds, and the land is starting to grow. And they realize that the land needs some light. So Aule, at the prayer of Yavanna, and if you remember, Aule and Yavanna are the Valar, and the Valai What do you say?
Valir.
Valir. The Valar and the Valir that they're technically together. So upon the prayer of Yavanna, Aule creates 2 lamps, and Manwë fills those lamps with hallowed light, or he hallows them, I think is what it says.
I just thought it was really interesting. Quick note on how they like the Ainur seem to pray to each other on that, where it seemed like Yavanna that prayed to Aule on that?
Yes, at the prayer of Yavanna, Aule made these lamps. So I'm not sure if that means she's praying to Ilúvatar.
And
then it's giving
it moved
Aule. That's how I took it.
Okay, gotcha. Because I was wondering if they're peers, so is it weird? I was like, is that just their form of communication to each other, or is that their way of formally requesting one another? But okay, that makes sense. And I'm not. I believe Melkor is on Arda, but he is hidden in the hole.
No, he hasn't gotten to that hole yet.
Okay, all right.
I don't think.
All right.
It says that he
and
flees.
Quick correction: he is definitely the strongest. I did look. We look back at. I didn't know if him or Manwë were stronger, but Ilúvatar says a few times, like Melkor, you are the strongest of the Ainur. So, yes, he is definitely the strongest, and as we see in this battle, it makes a lot of sense considering how many Valar there are.
Yeah, and they can't overtake him. No, the book says that he fled to outer darkness.
Okay.
And so he's not on Arda right now. So, like we said, the Varda Varda filled the lamp with light. Manwë hallowed it. Aule built it. So we have these lamps, and these 2 lamps were put on the very north of Middle Earth, and then the very south we have the lamp of Ilúin, and the lamp of Ormal. And these lamps gave light over the earth, and there were changeless days. So we thought that was interesting that the days are they're just light. It's light all the time. So there's still no concept of time yet.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I was confused a bit by that. That it does seem like it's day all the time, as far as I could tell. Just always light. And I think Tolkien plays upon that theme. Is going to play more upon that theme of light and darkness with Melkor coming up. But it seemed like the Valar themselves emitted light. And a note I got here, I think, was that Varda mentioned that Varda is very scared of, Melkor is scared of Varda. And she does, I think she emits the most light of the Valar. And she also is the one that creates the stars. And so it kind of appears like she put a star in these lamps.
So, that's how bright they are. I mean, they lit up all of Middle Earth, so
which is,
pretty impressive.
the sun is a star, so it could be very similar concept there.
So there are these changeless days in Middle Earth, and this begins the time they call the Spring of Arda, where the Valar are creating, or Yavanna is starting to grow all things, trees and grass and.
It's a great time. It's like it is just that everything seems to be the Shire almost.
I did think it was interesting that they mentioned that they said, and yet no birds were singing or flowers were blooming. So that's interesting that all things that grow are being created on Middle Earth, but there are no flowers blooming. Interesting. The Valar go to their first dwelling, and this is on the Isle of Almaron, which is in the Great Lake. And so they live there, and they have finished not the creation of Middle Earth, but finished a lot of good things.
Yeah, it does appear that they believe their work is kind of done, or it seems like. But to your point, it seems like they're obviously missing several things. But yeah, they have. This is their Spring of Arda, as you mentioned, and they decide it's time to take a break. Rest. They've been working really hard.
Yeah, and so they start saying that Manwë wants to have a great feast and invite all the Valar, even the Valar like Ulmo, who's normally out in the sea. He wants all the Valar to come, and essentially it's a celebration of everything that they've created. And the book specifically mentions that Aule and Tulkas are very tired. Apparently, they had not stopped with their service of creating the world. They had not rested since they had gotten onto Arda, and that includes fighting with Melkor. So they were very tired. And Melkor knows this. Do you remember why Melkor knows this?
He has spies.
Mm-hmm.
They mentioned he has spies, and I assume these are other Maiar spirits. Is all we know so far of the spies.
Yeah, they mentioned that he has some Maiar that are spying on the Valar, and so he decides that this is a good time for him. So he's going to come to Arda, to Middle Earth, and start sowing his evil seeds. So this is when he does come and he builds his, what would you call it? His stronghold, probably.
A Tunmo.
It's at the very north of Middle Earth, underneath the Iron Mountains. So he's not really on the land. He's I'm sure it's pretty, way below. He is there. The Valar don't know this, like I said, because of the feast, because they're tired. They're kind of resting and enjoying in their creation. And but then things start happening. What starts happening to Middle Earth?
Well, things start getting sick, and so things just don't seem right. The perfect world they created is having some maintenance issues, and so seems like they're pretty certain that means Melkor is back.
Yeah, and it's more than maintenance issues. Like the forest is growing dark. All green things start to get sick. The beasts turn into monsters, which sounds terrifying. And the rivers are being choked with weeds. So the Valar, this is, ringing warning bells. Like, who would be doing this? Duh, it's Melkor. So they're like, okay, we need to go find Melkor, and obviously start trying to get him off of Arda. But Melkor is prepared for this, and he decides to make himself known because he wants, like, the power of surprise. And so he starts, he finds the Valar, and actually, before he does that, he knocks out the two lamps, the north and south lamps that are keeping Arda lit up. And so Iluin and Ormal, he strikes a blow on those, and then Arda goes dark. The Valar were not able to find him, but what I find is so interesting is that he still gets scared of them and flees.
He doesn't want to face them in the open. So I think they were closing in on him, and he goes and retreats to his fortress. And then it seems like the Valar, it's interesting, the concept they gave is like they weren't really strong enough to keep the earth going and take out Melkor in a Tunmo at the same time. I didn't quite get with the kind of what they needed to do, all the power it took to keep the earth going, keep things growing. It appears it was hard for them to do that, but then also to actually go attack Melkor in a Tunmo. It seemed like it took a lot of strength.
Yeah, it made me feel like if they didn't restrain the earth at that time, it would have been fully destroyed. But they were like, I thought like they're holding it together with all their strength, and then also trying to fight Melkor. So, so they just decided to leave Middle Earth because Melkor has essentially made it a really nasty place, and they couldn't find him, and so they leave, and they go to what the book first says is the land of Aman. So we have a map, and like I said, if you are watching it on YouTube, you'll be able to see the map, but I can kind of describe it a little bit. It's across a ocean a little bit, and it's a whole nother piece of land next to Middle Earth. It will eventually be called the Undying Lands, so that might be familiar to you if you've read Lord of the Rings.
It seems to me just to be a whole other continent, although there is a small connection between these two. The way it really sits is kind of like it's a different continent.
Yeah. So they go there. They raise the mountains and of Pelori. The mountains go all the way around, right?
Yeah. So you see here on the map that they built a fortress all around because they're worried, they're scared of Melkor. Yeah. They do a full on retreat. Yeah,
and this is actually where Manwë dwells, and we mentioned this last week, where him and Varda dwell on the tallest mountain. It's called Tanaquetil, and it was so high that they could look across all of the earth. So it's like the highest peak in the entire earth. They probably could see all the way to Middle Earth at the top when they were dwelling there.
Or they really call it the Outer Lands, is what they call the standard Middle Earth continent. The Outer Lands. So you have
middle.
you
Yeah,
have
you're right.
Aman and the Outer Lands is essentially the two continents that
Yeah,
are
after
created at this time.
they went to the land of Aman, they started calling the book starts calling Middle Earth the Outer Lands.
I think it's interesting that these Valar, since there are no elves or men or any other creation, it's all basically about themselves. They are the beings for survival. So they just give up an entire continent to Melkor. They don't have to fight necessarily because they have a whole nother land they can go to. So they go and fortify up, and this is the safest thing for them to do. And since there's no other creation, they're the only living beings. That makes some logical sense. They don't necessarily have to go fight Melkor. This isn't their only land, if you will. So it's an interesting problem or status to have before the Children of Ilúvatar are created.
Yeah, they were able to bring back some great store of light and other things that they were able to save, and they were able to bring that back, and they start using that to make the land of Aman or Valinor. They start making it. Actually, they create it and make it even more beautiful than Middle Earth was during the Spring of Arda. So they make this place very, very beautiful, and they start to build their city called Valmar. And next to Valmar was a green mound called Ezilohar. And this is where Yavanna decides to start creating the two trees of the Valinor. Two trees of Valinor. And Yavanna, it sings a song of power, and the other Valar, Nienna, thought in silence and watered the mound with her tears. And so from that mound came forth the two saplings. And so while she's singing and Nienna's crying, Nienna's like watering the trees, and Yavanna is helping them grow. And they start growing into the two trees of Valinor. And the trees were named. Do you remember the names of the trees?
Yes, I do have.
From your notes.
I do have the names of the trees. They are Telperion and Laurelin. Each of those trees has a few names. So Telperion is also called Silpion and Dinquilate, and then Laurelin is called Malindala, and Colorian. However, it also says there's many other names they're called too. So I don't know if Tolkien gives us a breather and doesn't give us all 50 names they're called. I'm not sure. But I think the point of having a lot of names is just a lot of respect for these, and there's just a lot of different ways to convey the emotion about
and probably
them. So
like
Telperion, I think Telperion and Laurelin are the main names that they'll both go by.
And probably the other races are calling them different things. I think that's why there's so many names. Like the mankind probably calls them something. Elves, and it just keeps. And elves like to have a lot of names for things too.
Yes.
So these two trees are pretty cool. They give off light all day and all night. And at one point, they both give off light at the same time for one whole hour. And so that's actually how the Valar start using time. The one tree stays on for 12 hours. The other tree stays on for 12 hours, I believe. And within those 12 hours, there's an hour where they overlap. So this begins what they call the Days of the Bliss of Valinor, and it's also the start of the concept of time. So time is officially a thing.
Yes, and that's important because you start getting into impatience after time is created.
Oh, that's so interesting. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, after time is. I believe I have the trees where it's 12-hour days, and I don't know if there's night yet or not. So what I saw is that there's like each tree goes 7 hours with a 1 hour overlap.
Oh, interesting. I kind of just read into the 12 hours.
Yeah. So I think it's
my
just 12-hour days there. But anyway, there are times when both trees are shiny, if you will, and that is like gives a twilight hue. That's quite pretty. But that's I think the closest it got to like a sunset, which is odd because they're both shining. You would think you'd have more light, but the way it mixed.
Yeah, and I did not describe those trees in how beautiful I'm sure they were. Like one's dark green and the other's light green, and one's giving off golden blooms.
There's a decent amount of description on those trees.
They're absolutely beautiful, and I know I wouldn't be able to do it justice. So you should read the book with us.
But I find it's interesting that they decide, okay, we need a permanent source of light again. So that pillars are destroyed of Ormel and Ilúvatar and on the outer lands, and so they've moved to the new continent. They're like, we need light, so they set up light, and they've also set up time this time as well.
Mm-hmm. So the next part of the book kind of just expounds on where some of the Valar are during these days of bliss. And so they just kind of go through a couple of them. So I will just kind of start with Melkor. Like we said, he is hiding in Middle-earth, and he does often walk abroad in a very terrifying form. But he's not coming to the Valar, and they're not fighting right now.
But he almost has free reign over the whole Outer Lands continent, or Middle-earth continent, if you will.
Yeah, because the Valar aren't there. And then they mentioned Aule. He is living in the mansions of Aule, which, if you can imagine, his love of I want to say digging, craftsmanship and things. He's living in the mountains. And he kept the lore and the knowledge of the earth. And he's mentioned it as a friend of the Noldor, which are a type of elves. And he taught them many skills. So did you have...
we don't, obviously the elves have not yet been created in Tolkien's universe, but they do mention these things. So the Noldor they mentioned 3 types of elves that I think make the journey, and we don't quite know what that means yet. I can assume it maybe means going to the Outer Lands, but I don't know that yet. But so Tolkien's kind of alluding to what's to come, or telling us what's to come. So we have the Noldor, and then we have the Vanyar, and Manwë relates most to the Vanyar, or the Vanyar relate most to Manwë, maybe the most.
So the Vanyar are another type. Yeah, I'll mention them as I go along.
Okay.
Yeah, so Aule is a friend of the Noldor, and they're known as the most skilled among the elves. They were the first to achieve the making of gems. If you remember, Aule was a Valar who loved making those gems. And what did they make? The Noldor.
I believe they make the Silmarils.
Yes, the Noldor make the Silmarils, and they made a specific point to say that they are lost. They say the Noldor made the Silmarils, and they are lost. So we don't know what that means, and you probably don't either if you're reading along with us, but we'll find out.
Well, yeah, the Noldor don't even exist yet,
yeah.
Much less the Silmarils.
So that's what Aule is doing. Manwë, he is, like we said, he is in Tanaquetil, in his domain, but he has hawks and eagles that are kind of act as spies for him and let him know what's going on in the it's Outer Lands or Middle Earth, because Melkor is so far down deep below the mountains. They don't see what Melkor's doing, but they do see how Middle Earth is faring after Melkor essentially is destroying it. This is where they mention the Vanyar, the other elves, that Manwë loves the best because they love poetry, and Manwë loves poetry, so he gave them the gift of poetry. Anything else on Manwë during that?
I think maybe I don't want to jump ahead of you, but I just thought it was interesting. It's essentially they've created time, and then the Valar create what I had is a sense of order among them, like who does what, and these are already somewhat explained in terms of what they do. But I think it kind of seems like they start getting a 9 to 5 going. They have jobs. Things are getting a little bit more steady, and so they have Manwë is the vice-gerent, I believe is the title he's given. So he is, and he's always has been, but it seems like this is the first time he's referred to as the title as in charge of the Valar on Middle Earth, in Ea, if you will, which is the existence. And I believe, correction, I said that the last couple time podcasts. It's Ea, I believe how you say that. So and then Ulmo starts going around and keeping the sea safe, and also doing more creation on that. Also, Melkor hates the sea, so he's really the first line of defense for Melkor being able to get over
What does Melkor like?
into Amon. Well, well,
It was a joke.
Melkor likes power.
It's just funny because it's like he's scared and afraid of all the Valar, and he hates them all. So it's just
and then, but it does appear the Valar are a bit hesitant to leave Amon. They're scared. They've pretty much left the outer lands to themselves. Other than it seems like Yavanna would go over there, and she would try to heal some of the hurts of Melkor, and so she would see firsthand the destruction, and so she would go back and report to the Valar, like firsthand, like, please, we need to go to war with this guy. We need to not just. It seemed like
she was trying to urge them to.
She was like,
go to war.
Don't forget what Melkor is doing, and we can't just let him have that. And then Orome would go hunt Melkor's beast over there. So he would go on hunting trips and kill some of the great beasts.
They specifically say that beast turns into monsters. So they're essentially like terrifying monsters over in Middle Earth. And Orome, who he is known for his hunting skills, was going over and killing them.
Yep.
So that's kind of what those were up to. They mentioned Varda, but didn't really say much except that she dwelt with Manwë. And I'm sure the other Valar were doing other things. They mentioned a couple Maiar, but they were just helping the Valar in their duties. So this chapter ends super interesting. It comes kind of the first, not mention of the Children of Ilúvatar, but giving us a little idea of what Ilúvatar was creating within the children and what he saw, the difference between the elves and the men. And so because the Ainur did not fully understand how the Children of Ilúvatar were created, they didn't put any of their skills into the children. And so they're not seen as the Children of Ilúvatar's masters. It's more like their elders or their advisors, kind of.
Yeah, I have that noted too. It's very interesting, and that kind of sets up later on how the elves and the Valar, how they interact with each other, and mostly the elves. They say the men do somewhat, but it's mostly elves the Valar have connections with.
Yeah, the Valar like to connect with the elves because they were created the most like them. And then it specifically says, but to men Ilúvatar gave strange gifts. And in a second, I'll read a quote, which I think kind of explains that gift. So Ilúvatar creates Earth as a mansion for Quendi and Atani. And this is the first time we've heard those two words. What do Quendi and Atani mean?
Well, Quendi mean the elves, and Atani mean mankind, as far as I could tell. And I'm thinking that this is specifically Ilúvatar's name for them.
Just what Ilúvatar calls
his
them.
own personal language that he thinks in his mind of them, and that's why we have these. Because I don't know, and so that might be helpful as we're reading if we hear those names mentioned, like what perspective is happening
it's like
here
Ilúvatar's perspective.
versus the Children of Ilúvatar.
Sorry, did I cut you off?
I don't think so. I thought I was going to add something, but I think I'm good. Thank you.
So as the elves, we all know if you're into Lord of the Rings, the elves are the Quendi in this part of the book. They are the fairest of all, and they brought forth the most beauty. And we're not surprised by that description. The description of the Atani or the men was really interesting to us, and so I thought I would just actually read the quote from the book because I feel like it gives an insight to what Ilúvatar gave to the men. Therefore, he willed that the hearts of men should seek beyond the world and should find no rest therein, but they should have a virtue to shape their life amid the powers and chances of the world, beyond the music of the Ainur, which is as fate to all things else. And of their operation, everything should be in form and deed completed, and the world fulfilled unto the last and smallest. So they were not bound to the world. They were given the gift of freedom, which we can assume is the gift of death. And it was super interesting. Go ahead.
I think it tells us. You don't have to assume it. It tells us.
It actually uses the word death.
Yeah.
So they, like we know, they live a short time on Earth. But what I found interesting was that the elves stay on the Earth until the world dies. And so it's just showing that men have a greater gift to be able to leave the Earth and elves have to stay. And so when I think of elves, I think of them being like greater and grander. But in the end, the elves and the Ainur are jealous of men who get to leave Arda.
Well, Ilúvatar creates them for two distinct purposes, and so it's very interesting that this is brought up in terms of the Quendi they're the fairest and the beautiful. Their greatest bliss is in the current world, and so they are more like the Ainur.
And that's why they like love all things that grow. They love taking care of the world because they're there until they have to take care of it until it dies.
And it says, "Age does not subdue their strength." It was also a quote from the book. The Atani. So it seems like their last resting place is not in Arda. Their last resting place is not in Arda. They always will crave kind of that sense of going beyond, going different, trying to change status, not just being like, hey, I really like this place, I'm just going to be comfortable with it, but always trying to, maybe that comes into exploration and things like that, but essentially what it's getting at is, in the end, mankind dies. And so it says that mankind leaves the world and the elves know not where they go, is what they say. So it's just like the elves it seems like this is their eternity, is going to be on Earth, and it's alluded to that the Atani, mankind, have a different end goal than on the Earth. So it's very interesting in the mind of Tolkien how he creates that. I thought that was pretty exciting. And he says the gift of freedom, not just bound by this world, is how he put it. Not bound by this world, but kind of seeking elsewhere and whatnot. So I think essentially it's kind of alluding to a heaven or an afterlife for mankind, is what he's getting at with that there. So I find it very, very interesting that they also mentioned Melkor doesn't know where the men go either. But there is a reference at the end of this chapter to the second music of Ilúvatar, and basically it seems like the elves. This is kind of known. This may happen. This is the end of days, is how it's referred to. The end of days, the second music of Ilúvatar. They know, all we know about the men is that they're going to be part of that. The elves are not promised a part of that. And so, essentially, if you think of the music, it's a creation of a new world, is essentially what I thought that was. But anyway, this is all I thought this was all very interesting.
Yeah, it's all brand new to us, which is so fun that we're reading it together. So that ends the first chapter of the Silmarillion, called Of the Beginning of Days. We learn a little bit more about the world and where the Valar live, and also a little tiny bit about the Children of Ilúvatar. Hopefully we'll get there soon. We're still not there yet. We did go on to the second chapter, which is called Of Aule and Yavanna.
And for these podcasts, we were thinking about keeping it one chapter at a time, but some of these chapters are quite short. So we're doing about 15 to 17 pages of the book is what we're planning on, kind of rounding to wherever the nearest chapter is, seems to give us kind of some consistency in terms of time. So we're going to do chapter 2 in this podcast as well, because it's only a 4 or 5 page.
Yeah, it was pretty short. It was just a little bit more about Aule and Yavanna, and it reveals something pretty interesting too. Just a real quick, remember that Aule and Yavanna, they are together, and they dwell in the mansions of Aule, and Aule, loves creating things, and he really wanted someone to teach. He really wanted to teach someone his craft. Yavanna was not interested. And so he
said he wanted to have children he could teach his craft to, particularly.
Yeah, and so he is becoming impatient, waiting on the Children of Ilúvatar. They know that the Children of Ilúvatar are coming, but they don't know when. And he essentially got impatient and did his own thing. And he created...
Aule created the dwarves.
Yeah, Aule created the dwarves, which was interesting. I think we mentioned a little while in maybe the first podcast, we were like, we know where Elves and Men are the Children of Ilúvatar, but where are the dwarves? And so now we know.
Tolkien didn't forget to tell us.
Yeah, right. Tolkien did not forget to tell us. So that was interesting. He was impatient, and so he did. He created them in secret. He didn't tell anyone None of the Valar knew except, well, none of the Valar knew, but obviously Ilúvatar did know, and he wasn't thrilled. And so he came to Aule and he kind of wanted to see, talk to him about it. And Aule was just about to wake them up. So he had created them. They were like asleep and he was going to wake them up to, full creation. And Ilúvatar stopped him and said, what are you doing? Why are you patient?
No, actually, he has woken them up and he started to teach them a language. And so he is like 1 hour into waking them up and starting to teach them a language.
Okay, so it had. Oh, sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, and it comes into play when Aule later on when he threatens. Okay, like, do you want me to destroy them? And the dwarves are in fear, shirking back from him because they are awake.
Yeah, and this made Aule. It seemed like Ilúvatar coming to him and being angry with him. It made him sad that he regretted his impatience, and he really did not want.
Which is a big difference between him and Melkor. They both wanted to create something of their own. They both wanted life.
Mm.
I'm a little confused how Aule had the power to create life, and it seems like without the flame imperishable, he was able to create life. Melkor didn't seem to ever be able to do that. But they both kind of wanted a creation of their own, something they were over. But this conversation between Aule and Ilúvatar showed the difference between Aule and Melkor.
Yeah, shows who he worships, shows his humility. And so he was very sad. He loved the dwarves, but he saw that he should probably just start killing them. So he, raises his weapon.
So he's made 7. So he's made the 7 fathers of the dwarves, and so he's seven dwarves in. He's creating their language, and then
yeah, he's about to kill them. And Ilúvatar shows compassion.
He has his hammer in the air, and it says it pictures the dwarves are like, please, begging for mercy.
Yeah.
And so it's a very interesting scene. So Aule is probably in some sort of form that a mankind can recognize, but he's probably pretty big if he can smash 7 men with one hand. This is the first thing these dwarves have seen in life too, right? So this is their.
Why did you wake me up to this?
Very interesting scene.
Yeah, so Ilúvatar decides that he's going to allow the dwarves to live with them, but there was one exception. What was the exception?
That they needed to go to sleep, and they could not wake up before the firstborn of children, the firstborn or the children of Ilúvatar. So the elves and men had to be awoken first. So he's like, you can keep your creation, but they cannot be on this earth until I'm ready for my children first. And so he makes Aule put them to sleep.
He puts them to sleep, and he leaves them. I believe it was like in the mountains where he lives. They're hidden.
Yeah, it seems like it kind of covers them over something of that sort.
Yeah, so it was essentially like you need to learn patience, and you still have to wait, but you can have what you created.
I didn't think about that. You need to learn patience because he was impatient.
Yeah,
which is why he created them.
And also that Ilúvatar was like, wait, I have a reason why the children aren't here yet. So wait. I thought it was interesting how they mentioned how I keep saying the book Tolkien mentions how Aule made the dwarves, and it just sounds just like Gimli, and I love it. Strong, stubborn, fast in friendship and enmity, suffer more heartily, live long. And then it does mention that the elves think that when dwarves die, they return to stone, but the dwarves don't like that explanation, and they believe that they go to Mandos's halls, and then they serve Aule till the end of time. So that there is no clear description of what happens yet with dwarves when they die, but they did put that on the end.
Yep, and real quick, I wanted to note on that whole story between Aule and Ilúvatar that Aule says, "Hey, I want people I can teach things to," and then what he tells Aule is that he wants people that can understand the beauty of Ea, of creation. He wants them the glory and the beauty of Arda, and so that's what he tells Ilúvatar, because he's like, we've spent all this time, or time is somewhat irrelevant, but it's been a while. We've put a lot of effort into creating this, and it's just us 14 that get to enjoy this. And so he's getting a bit impatient, but I want to create creatures that can enjoy the glory that you've created, Ilúvatar. Is kind of how Aule puts it. And I just thought that was pretty interesting. It says Aule's humility saved his creation, and so his response to the authority of Ilúvatar, once again, is very different than Melkor's.
Yeah, I like that point. So, like we said, he did not tell any of the Valar about this, but he did decide to tell Yavanna. And Yavanna was happy for him that Ilúvatar didn't make him kill the dwarves, but she says that they will not love what Yavanna loves. And Aule, essentially, Yavanna loves all things that grow, and they're going to want to, use the wood, chop it down to make things out of it instead of um, let the trees grow and the plants grow. And Aule mentions that the children of Ilúvatar are going to do the exact same thing. And this is the first time that Yavanna kind of realizes, like, oh, they will. They might not love this world as much as I do, and they're going to stomp on all the things that I made and grew. And so
It's interesting that the Valar are, they're talking about these things, like they're having this is their deep conversation, like, wait, what is all this for? Like, the children of Ilúvatar, what are they going to do? And they don't always talk about these things, and so this conversation brings that up. And yeah, Yavanna's like, I've created a tree. She has two specific words for it, but basically trees and living beast. And she's really excited about those. I think Kelvar and Alvar are what she calls them. The Kelvar are the beast, and the Alvar are the things that grow, essentially. And so she's like, this is the creation for creation's sake is here. And then she's like, Aule, your children are going to cut down my trees and things like that. He's like, the children of Ilúvatar will be doing the same thing, honey.
Yeah.
It's kind of how that goes. And so, anyway, that leads to the next part.
Yeah, and so she's pretty upset by this. So she goes to Manwë to confirm her fears. She specifically does not tell Manwë about the dwarves yet, though. So she
doesn't betray Aule's trust, because Aule does finally tell Yavanna, like, I did create something. He tells the whole conversation he had with Ilúvatar, and she was like, he's so merciful and generous and gracious to let that go. But then she's very concerned about the kind of some of the point of future creation.
Yeah, and so she goes to Manwë and says, like, are the children of Ilúvatar going to do this to my things that I've created? And he said, yeah, they will. And
I think what that means is they will kill things to eat. They will cut down trees to build houses and things like that. That's
burn wood.
Her
cut
creation
flowers.
is somewhat utilitarian to them, and that's the confirmation there.
So she was really sad, especially for the trees. She specifically mentions, or the things that grow. What is that called? Alvar.
Yes.
Because the beasts can run away and try and save themselves, the Kelvar, but the Alvar, the things that grow, cannot.
She's no defense.
Yeah, she specifically mentions the trees. She holds them very dear, and not very many will mourn their passing. And I have a quote. She says, would that the trees might speak on behalf of all things that have roots and punish those that wrong them. So she's talking about talking trees. Manwë thought this was strange, but he did talk to Ilúvatar and told Yavanna that when the children awake, so will the trees. Thus is the creation of
the Ents.
The Ents. So Yavanna's love
the mother of the Ents.
Mm-hmm, yeah, her love for the trees and wanting to protect them from the children of Ilúvatar, the children of Aule, was the Ents.
She wanted some sort of balance there.
Yeah, so this pleased Yavanna, and she went back to Aule, and I just love how this ends.
Real quick, I love how that ends as well. But I want to mention her conversation with Manwë. She wanted more than just the end. She was like, oh, this is great, Manwë, because he basically, I'll grant your wish. He's like, now I'm going to have trees as tall as mountains. And
yes.
He gets it's the book says he stands up, although they don't really have physical form, but it says he kind of basically says he stands up over her, and with like his big voice says, no, your trees will not be any taller than what Aule has made, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
Because I didn't realize Aule was making the trees and she was not. Because I thought she planned. Anyway, I was a little confused by that, but essentially, no, your trees are tree height. They stay the same height. You could have some Ents, but that's the end of the balance. They're the mountain, and she's like, now the eagles can stay in my tree. She's like, no. Eagles are in the mountains. Your trees are not that high. etc. So anyway, just a little side note there of the interaction between Manwë and Yavanna.
Yeah, she didn't get everything that she was hoping for, because the children will still use the things, but still some extra protection with the Ents.
Yes.
Yeah, so I like how this chapter ends, because being married, it just felt like a little lover spat is what I called it. She walks back into Aule's workshop essentially, and she says, "Eru is bountiful. Now let thy children beware, for there shall walk a power in the forest whose wrath they will arouse at their peril." And then Aule responds, "Nonetheless, they will have need of wood." And he returned to his smith work.
Yep. A little bit of an agree to disagree on what's going to happen where there, it seems like.
Yeah, so he's like, well, they're still going to cut your trees down. But so that ends the second chapter. Like we said, it's pretty short, but it's very revealing as to how the dwarves were created. And that was really exciting. So that ends the chapters. I have a question that I think I've asked each time. What were some of the connections of the story to the Lord of the Rings? And we kind of just mentioned one there.
So I think really the creation of the dwarfs would be the biggest thing I saw, and then we have the Undying lands, the lands of the Valar, are kind of defined as well, which the elves obviously refer to quite often, and then a little bit more in terms of what Ilúvatar's purpose for men and elves are in terms of the gifts he created. I think all those translate over to Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, and they talk about the creating of the Ents too, which
yes, obviously the Ents.
the Ents, if when you're reading Lord of the Rings, you can tell they were there. It feels like they were there before the beginning of time, really, but they're very old. They really care about protecting the trees, and so it was just really cool to kind of get that background.
And real quick, going back to Manwë and Yavanna, when she's appealing to him, it's a very heartfelt appeal, and she goes back to the time, like, remember when we were there with Ilúvatar singing the world into existence, and so she appeals to him, like, do you remember, like, this is Ilúvatar's will that because she's like, sometimes you and I would sing together, and Manwë had to think about it. He's like, I do remember that. So it was interesting. They went back to Ilúvatar's will and creation, and they like think farther back, and they just had that conversation there. Anyway, side note there.
Yeah.
What else did you think about Lord of the Rings?
No, I felt like it gives you an insight on the dwarves, and just like when you watch Lord of the Rings, Gimli, he doesn't like the elves. There's just a lot of things, and it all like even stems from the Silmarillion, like some of his personalities that I don't even think were described in Lord of the Rings as much as they might have been described here. So I feel like Peter Jackson read it, read the Silmarillion too. He probably did, and took some of that in. So how does that make you think of the dwarves now that you know that they were not created by Ilúvatar? They were created by a slightly lesser being of Aule, the Valar.
It is interesting because it essentially means, to me, it says this world is really not for you. Or was not initially for you. And Ilúvatar says it best, though. He's like, my children by choice. What does he say? He's like, my children by choice and my adopted children. So he does adopt them in. So I guess they really are given the same benefits there. But initially, it seems like it was not for them, and then they are created specifically. Like, okay, here's where you don't have elves or men, under the mountains. So they're kind of given a place.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that I don't think any less of them, but it is interesting that they were not part of the original creation.
The original plan. Yeah.
It does make me think about I know I'm saying things I know nothing about, but like the hobbits, other races.
Oh yeah.
Like I'm confused. Are they part of men, or what are they? Will we know? I don't know. So that's
a very good point.
I started thinking about that in this chapter of just like, okay, then what about the other races? If there's just elves and men, and now there's dwarves, so maybe it'll be explained. Did you have any other questions?
Did you see Aule's desire for creation as noble or rebellious?
I feel like I saw it more as maybe a little selfish. Like, I know all these things, and I want to teach people the things that I know and love, which I like to do that too, teach people. But so I felt like it was out of the goodness of his heart, though. I didn't feel like it was evil or like I'm going behind anyone's back. He specifically did not tell any of the Valar, so he knew they would not be happy about it.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit. What you said? Noble.
I said noble or rebellious, but
a little bit rebellious or selfish.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was rebellious. However, Ilúvatar shows grace, and Aule shows humility, and that allows them to continue on. And once again, that's a big thing between him and Melkor that I brought out. Like, these guys had the same inkling, but their response to what they did wrong was the difference between one being on the good side of things and one being the evil side of things.
Yep.
Did the story of the Valar losing an entire continent surprise you?
Yes, it's hard for me to get over that there's like 14 of them. They're very powerful. Melkor's afraid of half of them or more. And yet they lose Middle Earth to Melkor. Obviously, Ilúvatar has said he's the strongest, and he is very very evil. And so it did surprise me though that they kind of just like, well, we're gonna leave because Melkor took over.
And it goes to it's like Melkor was given free reign over Middle Earth for, I don't know, thousands of years. That we don't really understand time yet, but he was able to mar and mess up everything it did for quite a while. And so I wonder if some of these races that were created were just his works of corruption during that time. Although I guess the children of nothing living lives there yet. No children of Ilúvatar haven't been created yet, so I don't quite know exactly all the extent of that, but it seems like when that continent has been marred quite a bit. When we get to it. And then I had a question for the audience. This is kind of a deep one, but I feel like the Silmarillion talks really about, so far, very deep concepts in terms of creation, in terms of mortality. I guess the fall of mortality, and the machine would be Tolkien's concepts, and then. So this one is, what are your thoughts on the gifts to the children of men? Essentially death. Do you think death is, I don't know, I think we want to live long. We want to live healthy. I think most of us, if we could push a button and say we won't die, would push that button without much thought. But what would happen if you never died and this was the earth? That's obviously a lot of things that would change there, but the death being a gift, does that make this time more valuable? I guess what are your thoughts on that? Like, I think I could probably make eternity work. It's an interesting thought there. So that's my pondering to the audience.
Well, those are the first two chapters of the Silmarillion, and like we said, we're probably going to do the next two chapters next, depending on how long they are. So we're looking forward to coming back and doing that and talking to you about them. So go ahead and read a couple chapters with us.
All right, A Couple of Silmarils out.